All right, we are broadcasting live, and your eyes do not deceive you. The intelligent gene pool is back in the house. No longer the witty banter or attempted witty banter of myself only. I have Mr. Stuart Butler, Mr. Tim Peter, and drum roll, the man who does not change, who we must find his picture somewhere in the attic, Mr. Robert Cole.
Nice.
We can't bring him up to speed. We were having an incredibly insightful internal dialogue of the merits of one-sided toast.
No, I was not. I want to make that perfectly clear. I was not engaged in that discussion.
Yeah,
I'm the one who brought it up. I will fully cop to this. I was listening to the classic Sting song "Englishman in New York," and I was trying to understand why, in fact, he likes his toast done on one side.
Now, are we referring that Stuart is our only English reference to culture person? Because we know he has a bit of a muddled English history. If you just simply ask him to describe the United Kingdom versus England versus, I mean, you will get into the remainder. Yeah, it'll.
He was Tongan. Isn't he Tongan? I'm pretty sure he's Tongan.
I don't know.
let us not start any geopolitical rows. I think there's a lot of that in the world today.
I'm glad to see you after being off the show for 2 years or whatever it is that the jokes are exactly the same.
Exactly the same. We're going back to the old standards.
Exactly.
2 years, we're like 5.
Yeah, maybe so.
Oh, it has. I actually had to look back. It had been actually. It's a little over 3, I think.
Oh wow!
Okay. Oh well.
Well, Tim's been back. Tim has graced. Robert is the one that first blinked out. He had, of course, highfalutin, highly important, super secretive governmental stuff to do, and then he blinked out. Stewie, of course, took over the world, so he had to rule it, and he was blinked out. And then I think Ed was just an abstention, which he is now. We get to pick freely on Ed because he's not here right now. So
and Ed just sent a text, and unfortunately he has had a non-trivial event occur, but everything should be fine.
Bear attack. Probably bear attack.
or Todd. Todd has an issue, and Todd is a hairless cat.
Yes, Rundgren has lost his ranking as the Todds.
Well, there goes my whole strategy of being the quiet, subversive fifth wheel to the program. I now have to carry some weight to the wagon, be the fourth wheel, which is not going to be a strong one. I did not come topic laden, by the way. I truly felt that if I did that, it would be a little bit kind of a kindle to trying to herd cats. So I just like, okay, I'm just happy to tell everybody's back on the screen again. My job here is done. We are broadcasting, gentlemen, so you get to go over and pick whatever happiness you would like to discuss.
Well, and do we have an audience that could suggest some topics if there's things?
I don't know. I'm not looking at any other screen because I have streamlined my broadcast to leaving this and simulcasting and everything, and I stopped using OBS. I stopped doing all the secondary stuff.
So no real-time interaction with the.
Well, unless they follow the link that I emailed out. Apparently, when I shouldn't have used Robert's name on the email. I've learned my lesson from before, and I didn't learn it again. As soon as I put Robert's name of guess who's on the show, opening rates went down. So
absolutely.
Wow. Wow. Harsh.
But again, to be fair, he could have picked any one of the three of us.
I was about to say, really, honestly, it was just a draw of the hat. Robert, you were the last name on the tile. So
well, I'm glad you didn't say it about me. I would have cried. I'm very sensitive.
No, he says way worse than you're
past it now, and everything's good.
Fortunately, the pills are helping. So,
God save medication. No, actually, for all things, I mean, other than CES running right now, I've been on this kind of topic tirade as to the integration of internal teams and the usages of scalability and what does 2024 look like. But they're hearing enough of me because that's all they hear on a regular basis. So I'm leaving it fully open to what you all would love to just banter about, because I miss this in the sense that an echo bubble. So many people I deal with clients that they believe one thing and that sets their path, and that one thing was not the right thing, and it takes forever to get back to the point of origin to realign where they're going. And I think if they had groups like this more often, or engaged with groups like this more often, where there was a fair trade of you're silly and you're full of crap, and why would you even believe that kind of people? I think would be good. So, gentlemen, what would you like to talk about?
Yeah, can I pile on that a little bit? Because I just to get people up to speed, I changed jobs about 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, and went from the hotel marketing side to destination marketing side, and it's been an amazing journey. I've really enjoyed it. But one of the things I've missed and I've identified is Discord like this, right? This conversation that we have where we're all willing to be honest with each other and challenge each other and debate each other and rigorously at times. And I think that makes me a better marketer for sure, to be challenged. And so I definitely missed this platform, although full disclosure, we sort of have this text string going, which it meanders between insightful and insulting. So somewhere in that spectrum.
The tagline for the show: insightful and insulting.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
But I do feel like, and I used to do the podcast with Fuel as well. And so it challenged me to always sort of stay on top. And so I definitely feel like, although I've continued to sharpen my sword and become a better marketer, that I'm missing sort of elements of that. So I'm glad to be here today and share some.
Well, Stuart, I completely disagree with that. I want to tell you why you're wrong.
What a load of crap.
That's not already.
It's full of crap.
That's because Tim already knows everything and is always right. So it doesn't.
No.
Robert, I completely disagree with that. What a load of crap.
No. Actually, I think I mentioned this to Tim. One thing I would really like to do, I think it would have been great if Tim and I got together. And I think we did something at maybe it was a Milestone conference where we were both on stage at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
But I thought it would be really interesting to just do a tour where we go, somebody picks out topics. We don't know the topics. And they pick out a topic and it doesn't matter. It's blockchain, right? And and then you randomly draw who's pro and who's con, and we just go.
Yeah.
So you're never prepared. You never know what you got to argue, and you just go. And I thought that would be just very intellectually challenging.
Robert, we weren't going to talk about the origin of the organization of this show. So why'd you bring it up? I mean,
you know what's interesting about that? And my camera's having issues. I apologize. But right before the pandemic, Ed and I were actually scheduled to be on a panel for. It was a group of conotels. It was an organization called OPMA, and it was called the Unpresidential Debate. And we were going to do exactly that, where we had random topics. We didn't know what they were, and we were given assigned pro or con on the topic. And so that was scheduled, I want to say, for March 30th of 2020, and obviously the world stopped. So we never got to do the unpresidential debate.
That was a fun. Discussion. We had a lot of fun doing that. I think the audience enjoyed it a lot, and it really kept us both on our toes. And I mean, I want to be very fair. In the spirit of transparency, I think we agreed far more than we disagreed. We literally were just trying to present the case to the audience to say, hey, here's what you ought to be thinking about. And, maybe the con is more relevant to your reality, or maybe the pro is more relevant to your reality. You should try to hear both sides. But I think probably 75% of the time we more or less ended up in the same place, and where we didn't, it was more nuanced than Robert, you're an idiot, or Tim, you're a jackass. Which, to be fair, is pretty normal for us anyway. So.
Jane, you ignorant slut.
very, very apt.
Hey! I am not ignorant.
Right. Yeah, there isn't. I really should. There was a study of people who think that they're that they're smarter, or they have far above.
Did you label that study the Edward St. Onge study? Did you label that the Edward? He's not here, so we get to do this.
That's right. No, but I think everybody assumes they're at about the 70th percentile at least, right? And you go, I think it averages out to 50, but I don't know. Maybe.
It's funny you say that. This is an operating principle we use a lot with clients. It's something I got from a boss years ago. We were building a business model for something. We were building a business case for something, and modeling out what we thought it would look like. And I think we had, our success rate was going to be basically in the 80th percentile. We weren't using percentiles, but functionally that's where we ended up. And my boss said, this is good, and I'm glad you're setting, aggressive goals here and things like that. But when in doubt, assume you're average. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of a thing that I just try to keep in the back of my mind always. Maybe you'll crush it, and that'll be great. But when in doubt, assume you're average, because then at least your business cases will be a little more likely to be reached. And these days, obviously, we prefer scenarios where we say, okay, what's the best case? What's the worst case? What is the likely case? Not the median case, but the likely case. But that advice has stuck with me for years. And
I agree. I've got another one to add to it. So
please,
always, if someone has a Southern accent, always assume they're 20 IQ points higher than you think they are. And likewise, if they have an English accent, assume they're at least 20 IQ points lower than you think.
40.
Yeah.
So you average out the average? Is that right?
Yeah, I got a Southern English thing going on. So,
Exactly.
but I will say the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is what Robert's
Yeah,
referring to,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
It is a real thing, and I think we probably all had people we've worked with in the past that exhibit that behavior, and they're one of the hardest employees to manage because they have the delusions of grandeur, right? They believe that they're so much more capable than they are, and so to manage those people is about setting expectations and creating a box where they can be successful without putting you out of business. But it's I've come in across quite a few in my time.
It's funny. We had a thing we did years ago for HSMAI, and we had a panel from people, various companies around the industry and things like that. And Google was on the panel. And one of the questions, I was moderating the panel, and one of the questions we asked was, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you rate your capabilities in certain areas? And, company A said, oh, we're an 8. Company B said, we're a 9. Company C said, we're an 8. And Google said, we're a 5.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really telling. Yeah. Right. Like,
you gotta always have that mentality, right? Of not being satisfied. I've sort of coming over to the dark side or the light side from the agency to the client. It's been a little challenge with me because I'm very my expectations are super high, and so I work with about 9 different agencies, and we've had some challenges communicating because I'm never satisfied, and it's hard for agencies to realize that because I'm not satisfied doesn't mean I'm dissatisfied. And some of my agencies, we work with a group called MMGY Global, and one of our account leads, Alan Kirkendall, was the first to really point this out. He goes, I figured it out. It's not that you're dissatisfied. It's just that you're never satisfied, and we can work with that. Like before, it felt like you were always beating us up, and it wasn't the case at all. It's just like I'm always like, yes, that's great. Let's do the next big thing. And so expectations and setting realistic expectations are important, but understanding you can always do better. Always do better. That's an important lesson.
It's funny from the time that we haven't last got the chance to do this. And we always make jokes about how much I talk, and we joke about how much Robert talks, and all this other fun stuff. But I've actually started teaching my clients 2 things: is using the term mansplaining and interrupting, because I'm actually teaching my client to interrupt. It's like, dude, I'm going to keep talking until you tell me not to talk, or stop me from talking and put something else in there. And I will also say, call out when things are being described that you don't need described. I don't need the explanation. And strangely enough, the dialogues have gotten better because they feel like they're not being caught up into the fire hose aspect of it, but they begin to feel like they contribute, good or bad. Back to your average comment. It's like, I don't care if the answer is not applicable or it can get shot down easily. It's the fact that you added it to the conversation.
Yeah.
You should give everybody Nerf balls and just say, hey, when you're done, just throw them at me. That's what I do. I find that works really well.
So I should take back the bricks, is what you're saying.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, yeah, exactly. It would hurt less when they were helping you with
It's an evolution. You start in Nerf balls, and then when you have a client for a long time, they carry like medicine balls, right?
What's the stack of bricks in the corner? Oh, you'll see.
Eventually, they have a morning star.
And that concludes the presentation.
So I have a question for you all, and it's inspired by a LinkedIn post that I did this week that has inspired some conversation and the like. And I'm curious for y'all's point of view, where there was this FocusWire report that talked about the fact of how travel has done better digitalization over the last bunch of years. They've driven more direct revenue and the like. And where there's a lot of pushback is yeah, there has been a lot of progress, and also there's a long way to go, right? There's so very much to the point of what Stuart's talking about not being satisfied. I'm like, where do you think we fall? Where do you think people are right now? Or what are you seeing in terms of people doing, a good job at driving direct business, or doing a good job at CRM, or doing a good job at, using digital to create better guest experiences? Or is it, oh God, no, it's a nightmare. Everybody sucks. I'd love to hear people's perspectives on this, if I may.
Why is Robert smiling? Robert's smiling.
I would say I'll be harsh. I'll take the everybody sucks approach, just to be contrary.
Good. I was wondering who would fill in the role of Ed today.
Damn.
Exactly. There's some that is better. I haven't necessarily noticed a lot of much better, more relevant, highly targeted sorts of things that are really appealing to me. And I'll use a case study, which I really should kind of turn into a real case study. My wife and I are taking a very long extended trip of 56 days, right? And so it's our 40th wedding anniversary. We're going on 3 different cruises. We're just going, Hong Kong, down through Southeast Asia, down Australia, New Zealand, French Polynesia, back to Hawaii, right? So
bring everybody up to speed is because the statute of limitations ran out and you can go back to the countries.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. 35 years in some of these places. And I was acquitted on all charges. I don't understand. But what's interesting is, first flying there. So you have the whole airline, what's the best way to do that? 3 days of hotel in Hong Kong, 5 days of hotel in Sydney, 3 days of hotel in Honolulu, and then all sorts of tours and activities and things like that in terms of excursions off of the cruise ship, let alone selecting the cruise ship itinerary. So it's the things that I've seen are absolutely insane in terms of just either everything from incredibly stupid pricing decisions, which I've taken advantage of, to just inability to book certain things and to make this. Disney is, of course, held to the highest standard. They really do a fantastic job. Trying to book Hong Kong Disneyland, almost impossible. They had a bug in their website all the way until December 31st, because obviously it had something to do with their calendar. You could not book a date in 2024 until that year because of a bug in the calendar. I mean,
it was like the old rate loading season problem, right? You want to book 366 days out. Yeah,
I'm sure do that. It was a little piece of JavaScript code or something like that just who the hell knows, right? Some little parameter wasn't set, and you're like, what's going on? And
more importantly, why did they not realize that, right? No,
I talked to their customer. I went to their managing director on LinkedIn, and the guy replied back, kind of became a friend, didn't really reply. I'm like, what? Just so you know, if your advanced bookings are down, it's not the market, it's you, sort of thing. And it's just, but still, even given that, so just assume you're a traveler that wants to go to Hong Kong Disney, right? You want to get first and early access, which lets you in the park early, right? You want to get premier access, which is kind of like fast pass, right? 8 attractions, a couple shows. You want the meal voucher, right? You want to go to these most of these things you can't get premier access until a couple weeks before. You can't book these other things, and you're like, what are you doing? You are leaving all this money on the table, and it's insane. Now, and you just look at it and you want to beat your head on the floor. And I wanted to wait until actually 2024 just to see if the thing was still broken, because then I was going to go to the guys corporately, right, and just go, what are you doing?
You would
here?
think that Disneyland would
Unbelievable.
tell, because they're a Hong Kong representative of the Robert Cole experience, they should preload the package. But apparently, the parts aren't talking to each other.
Well, but just the process is just so crazy, and it's over and over like that all over the place. I mean, the hotel stuff, I didn't book directly with any hotel because
Robert, we have to dump you from the conversation.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I would. No, wait. No, I didn't. I tried to, but I couldn't get amazing pricing at better properties. Right.
Can you imagine traveling with Robert, the tome that he brings? Let us bring out the book of today.
Let me tell you, I got a spreadsheet because it's not just my wife and I. We're going with 2 other couples, and I'm now because they're like, oh, well, if somebody finds an excursion, just book it and then we'll pay each other. I'm like, oh, hell to the no. That's just going to be a
I know what to get you for your trip, Robert. One of those little sticks with the flag on the top.
Yeah, pretty close.
I know.
But no,
Robert,
it's absolutely crazy. I'm staying in Hong Kong at a hotel that you cannot get for less than for 3 days for maybe $750 for $352. And again, it went through. I think that one was Booking.com. Probably went through Mickey Travel or some bed bank or something like that. I don't know why it's that low. I don't really care. Right, sort of thing.
You as the consumer are going to take advantage of their of their situation.
Yeah, I'm booked. I think I told Lauren I'm booked at the QT in
Sydney.
I'm booked at the QT in Sydney. It's great location. It's less than the hotel I had booked directly. I was in the Ovalo, 1889 or something like Woolstore 1889. Booked direct. That was very good. But this one, it's $500 less. It's $830 for 5 nights, and I booked that one through TripAdvisor. Right, I don't know why. It's through a bed bank. It was hotel beds, obviously, or something like that. And then just one last. Honolulu. It's through Hopper, and it's at the Outrigger Reef. I've got like an Ocean View Tower King for $700 less than you can get. I don't know why, but I'm fine with saving a couple grand on my 11 nights of hotels. So
sure.
I have no idea.
The frustrating part about this story is when you started, I thought you were going to go in a very different direction than you did, right? Because first I thought you were going to talk about just when you're doing a really complicated trip, how hard that is. And I mean, a trip like this is obviously an edge case, so it's understandable. Right. The edge cases might not be the ones people solve for, but that's not really what you're talking about. The second thing I thought you were going to say was the lack of integration among disparate systems, right? I'm trying to, my all-time favorite story about this, and I don't like telling stories where I'm the hero of the story, but I pissed off a director of loyalty once.
Do you wear
but he always is, so why not?
No. I just couldn't resist being a smartass is the thing, right? I like telling stories where somebody else is the funny one, or at least thinks they're the funny one, but I couldn't resist being a smartass. We had a situation, I worked with a hotel company where when people signed up for the loyalty program, there was not a connection between the loyalty database and between the websites. And so what the loyalty program would do was they would allocate a block of numbers that would be assigned to people as they signed up. And of course, the websites were coming up on the end of their allocation. So I went and talked to the director of loyalty, and I said, we need more, we need another allocation so that we can continue to provide people with a loyalty number. And she said, we don't have any, we've run out. And I said, I'm sorry, you ran out of numbers? Aren't there like an infinite supply? Which did not go over well at all. But it's an integration problem, right?
Yeah.
And you're not describing that either. You're describing basics of revenue management, right? And distribution of rates and things along those lines. So that you've got, if not parity, at least something closer, at least not egregious disparity in terms of rates. Like this is 101 kind of stuff. So it certainly supports your argument of what the hell, man?
Yeah, well, and that's just surprising, in terms of the discovery and finding properties and things like, it's just so incredibly challenging. And and if you start going on, if you want to book direct on the property, or the brand websites, it's still a crappy experience. I mean, and I'm happy to call people up. Marriott, what the hell's going on with your maps and your zooming? I mean, because again, I've kind of my formula, very honestly, and again, I've told a lot of folks at the OTAs, they won't do this because it's in conflict with their recommended, default strategy, which kind of drives a lot of preferred, advertising placement, things like that, obviously. But it's like, no, when I look for a place, I'm looking for generally a neighborhood sort of area, some sort of defined geographic area, not the entire city of Sydney. Right, sort of thing. I'm looking for something relatively well defined. I want a 4 or 5 star hotel. I want the guest ratings. Since everybody seems to be moving to a 10-point scale, booking one out. I think Expedia is going to 10 as opposed to 5 to avoid the
5-star versus 4-star. Yeah.
So. I want an 8+. I like 9+, but they're that's sometimes limiting. So 8+, and sort them in ascending price order.
Sure,
that's it. That's my default. Almost every time I travel now, that's what I look for because I want to go down the list and go, wow, look at that incredibly. No. Oh, there's a good one. Why is the the such and such price so low? Looks like a great situation. Oh, and fully refundable. Sorry, hoteliers, but that's a filter criteria.
Tim knows this because I had an angst about this a few months ago. Since the COVID lockdown and so forth forward, I had this angst that I was dealing with people at different places in terms of stuff where I feel there was a gap point that was created in our infrastructure in hospitality. That because of the purging of so many talented people or the shifting of people, and we're already short of people at a time. And then as we try to rebound it, some people were put in roles that they had not fully filled in from a skill set perspective. And I feel, to answer a little bit of what you're asking, Tim, I think that the response has been trying to create a dumbed down technology that handles a lot of things without the necessity of understanding how the complexities of how it's actually done. And unfortunately, it's also on an ecosystem that still exists of sandbox mentality of my system does my stuff. I don't let other systems talk to my tech. Your tech doesn't. And it creates a dysfunction as to how each of the systems are trying to solve a problem, but they're separate from each other in the true ability to make it work together. Very few tech stacks work well together that I'm seeing on a regular basis. And then they're being run by people that are overly reliant on them because they never fully formed the skill sets of how to calculate or function without them.
Yeah. Well, I have a quick thought about that. I mean, talent, and I had a LinkedIn post last week that engendered some other discussion about this, which was funny to see people argue about this because these weren't my stats; these are from the Department of Labor. But the travel and leisure, leisure and hospitality is still down relative to where it was in February of 2020. There are still fewer people working in leisure and hospitality than there were 4 years ago. And it is one of only 2 industries, as the government defines, the NAICS kind of stuff, right? The job categories. It is only one of 2 industries where that's true. So we're still down. I'm going to see if I can pull this up quickly.
What was the other one? Healthcare?
No, it was like mining and logging or something. Like it was it was, which also is a very, very, very small industry. I looked. I don't remember the numbers, but I think the leisure and travel employs something like 4 million people or something like that, and I think the other one employs something like 400,000. Right, so it's dramatically different.
I'd probably add to my statement the one thing too is that what didn't come back faster than it should have is the training schedule of bringing people in as they brought people on board to be more fully functional into the roles that they were put in. A lot of
sure. That's a cost saving, Lauren.
Yes, and usually the first one that goes off of we don't need that stuff. Slash,
Well, but also if you're running, don't get me wrong. I'm going to make an excuse for people, and I feel bad making an excuse because you're right. Your core point is right. But if you're running with fewer people than you used to run with, also having the people who can provide the training to the people, you're going to have fewer of, and they're going to be pulled in more directions. So it's sort of a self-licking ice cream cone in terms of like, how do we make this thing worse all the way around?
If you take your ace pilots off the front line, you don't get as many shots, planes being shot down while they're training other people.
Well, but this isn't accidental; it's a strategy, right? They
want
lower labor.
Having fewer people to the level that we have, I don't think is a strategy. I do think you're right that the management companies, that the REITs, the ownership groups, et cetera, are always looking to lower labor costs. I fully acknowledge that.
Right.
But we're down 163,000 employees relative to where we were in February 2020. Mining and logging is down 45,000. Other services is down 45,000. Then everybody else is up, with professional and business services up 1.51 million. That's net new jobs, by the way, because don't forget the population has grown during that period as well. So there's more people aging into the workforce as people also age out. So, and the big one, the places where I think we lose folks, in my opinion, and I haven't seen good data on this, but is healthcare and social assistance is 1.1 million folks higher. So people who were, people were working in housekeeping in hotels can now go work in housekeeping in the hospitals or places like that, and probably make a better wage. And transportation and warehousing is up about 857,000.
Well,
and I know firsthand, folks who are losing back of house folks to I'm loading trucks at Amazon, or I'm loading boxes at an Amazon warehouse and things like that.
And the jobs are better jobs, not in terms of content of the actual task, but in terms of the benefits, the scheduling, just all of those, ability to pick up additional shifts, ability to drop shift, swap shifts, all of that stuff that happens at Amazon at a and certainly the hospitality industry is paying more because they had to keep keep up, things like that. But,
I know a property who is piloting guaranteed hours for some of their shift work folks to try, rather than paying more per hour, they're guaranteeing, look, at the end of the week, you're going to go home with a paycheck of at least this much money. Because I think that's hurt a lot of people too. It's early days. Absolutely. It's a pilot. We'll see if it works. But the idea is, if you're working in the Amazon warehouse, for instance, or Costco or wherever, at the end of the week, you will get 35 hours worth of wages, regardless of what the hourly is. Hey, I can pay my rent with that. I can put gas in my car. I can buy some groceries and the like. Whereas if you're on shift work and, oh, hey, we had a light occupancy night last night, so we cut some folks early, sent some folks home early. Your hours can fluctuate more, and your wage can be less consistent.
But what Amazon will do is they will let people, if let's say, you've got some warehouse, and Mike, I have no idea how the logistics work on scheduling, all that sort of thing. It's way above my pay grade, right? But they are looking at, they have too many people staffed between, it's 3:00 in the morning at some warehouse. They've let people voluntarily leave. Now they aren't going to get paid, but they're like, fantastic. I've got stuff to do. If they're on that overnight shift or something, I've got stuff to do. I'll go up. It's fine.
Not least of which is sleep.
Or whatever, something's come up. It's like, we aren't busy. You want to go. That's fine. And those sorts of policies are just, they're so, Amazon gets a lot of grief for not being employee centric, and they can be, it's kind of like, these people are cogs in a machine, but they've set a lot of policies that really make it, let's try to make this really work efficiently for everybody. Right. So I
want to ask Stuart something, because Stuart has to do with different things, in the sense of, I was going to make a joke about him having a lot of little yellow minions, but I would rather ask the idea of, how does this weigh on your engagement with the groups that you bring on board, the agencies you bring on board? Is metrics and bandwidth conversations you bring up, of like, is this something you say you do, but how scalable is it? Is that stuff that you deal with?
Yeah, 100%. The worker shortage is real in hospitality and in the agency world, right? And employee turnover has been a problem. It's slowed down a lot in the last 6 months, but over the last 2 years, employee turnover at agency level has been a challenge, and not just the agencies I use. Talking to people across the industry,
Right.
it's just a challenge because there were not enough workers to fill the jobs, and so employees sort of took they had the swing of the power, and so they could make choices, and people could double their salary by just making a lateral shift to a neighboring agency, and it created challenges for the clients, right? Because obviously there's a lot of institutional knowledge that is shared with your agency partners, and it takes a while to get that synergy back. So it's a problem, but I think it's one of the many problems that was exacerbated by the pandemic, but wasn't necessarily created by the pandemic. We were seeing worker shortages before the pandemic. We were seeing the swing back to this generation of people, and I hate to say it's about their age or that the millennials or the adults under 42 now, or the Gen X or Gen Zs are the problem, because I think it's society has shifted. Our expectations have shifted. You don't have people now and that are going to go and work 20 hours a day, never see their family. Like, this work-life balance thing is a real desire for the majority of people. Their expectations of value from their job is different. It's a lot of people will come in and say, well, what do you do for me? Not what can I do for you? So we've just shifted as a society. And I think we got to acknowledge that. So we've all got to, when we talked about this pre-pandemic, everyone has to be positioned as an employer of choice. You've got to understand your workforce. You've got to understand what motivates them, what incentives matter to them. And I would encourage everyone. I just finished reading Sam Walton's book, Made in America. And I don't know if you guys have read it, but it talks about the origins of Walmart. And, I'm not saying Walmart's perfect today with how they treat employees, but if you read that book or listen to the book as I did, you'll see that he understood acutely that the associates, as they call them, their employees, were the most important asset that Walmart had. And without motivated, happy, content, consistent employees, you could never have a customer experience that was positive.
That's absolutely right.
That is more true in the hotel industry than it is any other industry.
Absolutely.
And so I believe, going back to the hotel conversation, I know you asked me about my situation, but I think for our audience's benefit, let's focus on hotels. Hospitality is being built on the backs of housekeepers, the back end staff, the front desk for years, right? And yet, for the most part, I'm generalizing, they have not been the ones that have received the benefits of that, right? We all know that bad housekeeping will destroy a good property, right? If you go in and a room is dirty, it doesn't matter how good the customer service is, doesn't matter how good the booking engine is and how frictionless that was. You've got a dirty room, you're never going to stay there again. You're going to leave a bad review. It's going to spiral. And so I think savvy hotels have to adjust, and they have to figure out ways to, not necessarily just say, I'm going to give you an extra $1 an hour, because I don't think that's what it is. But they got to find a way to give people better work-life balance. They got to give people more choice. They got to give people more long-term incentives to stick around, which is what Walmart did through stocks and options. And they've got to give them a piece of the success. They have to be long-term success in the hospitality industry, to keep your staff motivated. You've got to share in the profits to some degree, whether that's financially and in other ways. You've got to share the success, so the employee comes in every day and understands that if they do a killer job, not only do they feel good, but it directly benefits them as well. And I don't know why more properties aren't going in that direction.
I have a couple of quick points, if I may. First, Stuart, I agree with you completely. I think everything you said there is spot on. I think that one of the things I would add to that is, I have always found that I think there's a lot of research that backs this up, that money is a good short-term motivator. It tends not to be a great long-term motivator. So I do think you're right that we have to figure out, how do we get folks more money? That definitely plays a role. And also, how do we give them more meaning in what they do? How do we help them see that this is actually, beneficial to their community, beneficial to the customers, beneficial to the company, and something that they feel good about? Because people, what's the old line? People don't quit jobs, they quit bosses, right? People want to feel good about what they're doing. So I think there's something we have to do there as well to bring an emotional connection in on some level. And I don't mean like sorry, but a bullshit version of we're a family. We're not a family. That is one of the most annoying things that companies say. We're not a family. We don't lay off our kids or our cousins.
The pandemic proved that wrong, very wrong.
Yeah,
right?
that was a real
exactly.
that came out of the pandemic.
Exactly. That doesn't mean we don't care about you. That doesn't mean that we don't look out for your best interests. That doesn't mean that we don't, value you as human beings, right? Because we have to do those as well. I posted a link in the chat to an article that I wrote for HSMAI, actually at the start of the pandemic, and it was backed by research from Facebook and Meta that really talked about. To be fair, the reason Meta did this was they wanted people to use their tools for helping to hire and the like. But the research was really solid in terms of what people were looking for and the like. And some of the stats are a little out of date, but the basic premise I think holds up. And it is exactly what you're talking about, right? The job of ownership, the job of management is to take care of their staff so that their staff can take care of the guests. And we have to acknowledge that we have to use technology to supplement and augment, kind of going back to Robert's point about how these things don't connect, or it's hard to do the things. You have to have the right levels of tools and talent that work together if you're going to create the great experiences, especially if we're operating, with fewer people. The last thing I want to say, and it's the only place I push back, Stuart, I have to read something to you, okay? And if you guys will indulge me for a moment, okay?
It's only 12 pages long, so we're ready.
No, it's a relatively short paragraph. It's a few sentences. It's not terribly long, right? They have trouble making decisions. They would rather hike in the Himalayas than climb a corporate ladder. They have few heroes, no anthems, no style to call their own. They crave entertainment, but their attention span is as short as one zap of a TV dial. They hate yuppies, hippies, and druggies. They postpone marriage because they dread divorce. They sneer at Range Rovers, Rolexes, and red suspenders. What they hold dear are family life, local activism, national parks, penny loafers, and mountain bikes. They possess only a hazy sense of their own identity, but a monumental preoccupation with all the problems the preceding generation will leave for them to fix. Mm-hmm. That is from Time Magazine's cover story about Gen Xers 30 years ago. I think some of what you're saying about the younger generation is true. It's also because they're young.
Yeah, I get that. But I think society has to. You can go back. We did an episode of the Fuel podcast on that subject, and we were quoting literally. Plato had comments about the next generation, right? So,
the foibles of youth.
Exactly.
As we get older, we all sort of get angry about the younger people, mostly because we're jealous that we're not young anymore.
Hey!
But I do think that society has changed expectations of what a relationship is, what parenting is, has changed, right? We no longer send our children up a chimney, right? We actually care for our children and probably a little too much. We overprotect them, right? So I think there are shifts, but you're right. I think some of that is just
well, and if I can add one thought to that, I think it goes back to what I said a moment ago about it's not a family. I think for years we all people of our generation, people who might be a little older, Robert, no, I'm teasing. Right?
Wow.
Like we grew up. Wow. We grew up in a world.
I didn't even do that one.
I couldn't resist. Robert just had a birthday this week, by the way. For those who don't know, I just have to tease.
I was born in the 50s, barely, but I was born in the 50s.
Actually, quick aside. Very, very, very quick aside. A friend of mine who works at Rutgers University had a student come to them and ask them for one of their classes if they could use a citation from a paper because, it was written way back in the 90s. Wow. And it was just like an arrow through the heart, like it's not current, it's still valid as an academic citation because it's really old. Anyway, the point I was going to make here was, I think all of us grew up in an environment where we were told that, you could go to work for a company, you could work there for most of your life, the company would look out for you. It was, there was a certain relationship that existed that was a little more patriarchal, a little more paternal, a little more caring, a little more familial in the sense of they're going to look out for you, is what we were told. I don't know that any of us actually worked in an environment where that was true. Our parents did.
Yeah.
You know, you went to work. My dad worked for the same company for 38 years, right? Robert, I think your dad worked for Boeing
28.
for
Boeing
28 years, right?
Yep.
Right. We were told the world worked the way that it worked when our parents were working. I think the generations behind us are the generations who go, that's just not true, and are asking for more of.
Well, businesses
are making it more transactional.
Bargain, right?
Well, that's just it. Right. They recognize it's more transactional and are basically saying, okay, if this is a transaction, here's what I need out of the transaction.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily wrong in that regard if that's the world we're going to operate in, right?
So one of the areas I think of opportunity in our industry is HR. I think HR has to evolve, right? Because the needs of the human resources, which I just, it's a funny term in itself.
Yeah, it's a funny joke.
Are changing, and I think you've got to look at policy and how we treat people and start to understand. I'm always a big fan of the phrase, you have two eyes, right? And one should be focused on the here and now, and one should be way down the road in the horizon. And I think we can make short-term decisions to enforce policies. Like, I'll give you an example. I have a friend who recently lost a loved one very unexpectedly, right? And the policy of the business that they worked with was you get a finite number of bereavement days, and then you're back in the saddle, right? And so that made sense at some point to a corporate overlord, but there's no humanity in it. And so the company that this person works for was very accommodating and realized this was a tragic loss. It was unexpected. This person, it was a very close relationship, was a spouse. This person just needed more time. But the job that they're in doesn't make a lot of money, and the spouse that passed makes a lot more money, would be considered the breadwinner. So they're worried about finances. And the job that they had is a part-time job. It doesn't pay a salary. So if they're not there, they typically don't get paid. Well, their job stepped up and said, hey, our policy is this, but what we're going to do is you take the rest of this month off. You will revisit then, and if you need more time there, we're going to pay you what you would have earned anyway.
Wow.
This person now is the most loyal employee they're ever going to have.
And how much did that cost to do that?
Not a lot, right?
To it, but
in the grand scheme of things, they didn't have to replace the person. They didn't have to retrain the person. And now they've got a much more motivated employee that's going to be loyal till the end, So it's just putting humanity into these HR decisions.
And that probably wasn't a transactional decision on their part.
No,
that was a human decision. And that's the bottom line. I mean, and these aren't new concepts. I mean, way back in the 80s when I worked for Four Seasons, right? Izzy Sharp would come in, and we're talking with, people who are spending, tens of millions of dollars to build these hotels, going through the policy. And I think it was the Nevis property. We're sitting down with them, and it was developed by kind of, Holtzman, the guys who were doing Rock Resorts, but Rock Resorts is kind of not it's going to become a Four Seasons. That's all fine and good. And so we started explaining for the housekeepers, the benefits were, yes, after 6 months, you get, I can't remember, it's like 2 or 3 nights at a Four Seasons comp, right? And not in some crummy employee room, but just like any other guest. And they're like, oh, no, that's not going to happen. And it's like, well, it's not going to be a Four Seasons. And Izzy would sit down and say, look, who do you think is the most important, staff member at the hotel? And they go, oh, the general manager, the concierge, the chef. And it's like, no, it's the housekeeper. All those other people, the chef messes up something. Let me give you a souffle for something. Let me do this. We'll make it right. General manager, whatever, we'll do this. Housekeeper, as Stuart said, right?
When I had a meeting with my staff when I used to run hotels, I would say, who's the one person that's expendable in this room? And they would do exactly what you said. Oh, the housekeeper. No, me. I'm the GM. I don't have to be here today. You guys, if you miss your shift, I got dirty rooms. If you miss your shift, nobody's getting food. Me, you just like, hey, the boss is in here. What the hell? It's true.
It's a better day.
It's a good day. And actually,
I used to say that all the time until my boss took it seriously one day. No, I'm kidding. No.
Before I forget one earlier phrase to one thing, I want to say one thing. One thing that I'm beginning to add to my relationships with clients and so forth is we're building a 50 first dates profile. Going to the relationship that time relationships with agencies is temporal, and that you have this chance where all of a sudden your account manager changed or the communications to the agency changed, and we literally have condensed a bring you up to speed content piece that gets handed to the, hi, I'm sorry, Susie got promoted. Good for Susie. Good for her. Bad for me, because now I got to talk to, who is it I'm talking to? Great. Here, Mary, read and watch this, all this stuff. When you're done, let's do some Q&A and we'll get some orientation going for you. Because to your point, you lose that asset. I know it was an older conversation, but I didn't want to lose track of that. But go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, just the one thing I wanted to add, though, was also on the socioeconomic aspect, is you come out and go, plus, how do you expect the housekeepers to understand the experience that's supposed to be produced if they've never experienced it? And his point was, the middle management and most of the upper management of Four Seasons hotels was not the market segment being served.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Leading, we had the same thing. Yeah,
absolutely. And you go, you treat them, and they're treated just like a guest, not just like, it's a guest. Yeah.
So
everybody's treated the same. And he ran that company based on the golden rule, treating everyone the way you would like to be treated, which included employees, investors, vendors, everybody. It's just like, no, that's how we do it here. And that's my argument for how that became a great,
So interesting company. In some discussion with client, we're now treating, we always say our guest, the data of our guest is not ours, if we treat it from that perspective. The second is the decision of our staff is not ours. I have a client that's very adamant about the fact the reason why somebody shows up is because they found the reason to come back to the job that day. And that's my responsibility to make sure they have that reason. And yes, it can be money or whatever, but the job opportunity is there. As you pointed out, Tim, there's a gap point of places. And maybe in certain markets, it's not as easy to change from one place to another place because everybody's pretty full staffing, maybe not. But the idea of it is that we're on the bad side of that equation when it comes to having the control over the relationship. We don't have often the luxury as the employer to say, well, if you don't work out, there's somebody in line behind you. You want to make an investment to those people.
Right.
And by so doing, do they feel like it's worth coming back the next day? And I thought it was a neat take from their perspective that they look at it that it's not a matter of, well, if they don't show up, I'll just find somebody else. It's like, I need to give them the reasons that they find value in coming back each day.
Yeah. Well, and I would add to that, I'm gonna project forward into the future. And I don't know if this is 2 years. I don't know if this is 5 years. I don't know if this is 20 years, right?
We do the wings.
We know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. We know there's going to be more automation, right? We know that there will be more technology. There's going to have to be. That's undoubtedly true. And, we certainly, the tools exist today. People are making them today, not at scale, but the tools exist today for housekeeping robots, right? The tools exist today. I mean, for God's sakes, you could put a Roomba in the hallways if you wanted to. There's things that you can do to automate some of this. At the same time, what guests are purchasing is service. They're purchasing a certain level of quality. So somebody has to be able to look at the work that the robot did when the robot exists and say, yes, this actually meets the standards that our guests expect from us. Yes, this is at the level we want it to be. So there's always going to be a human element, regardless of how automated any of this gets, to make sure, whether it's quality control, whether it's setting the standards in the first place, whether it's understanding the needs of the guests in such a way that you're saying, this is the service level we're going to provide our guests, that you still have to make sure you've got people who understand that, and you still have to make sure you have people who are committed to that, or else you're going to be out of business in the long run because the brand experience will suffer and the guest experience will suffer.
So I had a really cool conversation a couple of weeks ago with a local franchise owner of a fast food chain that I'm not going to mention because I don't know if this is public knowledge or not, but they are currently in our market beta testing AI drive-through voices, right? So you pull up to the drive-through and you're no longer talking to a human being. You're talking to an AI that is programmed to understand inventory, cook times, what specials to push, what not to push. Very human, like indistinguishable, very, very high-tech functioning. It's great. And I was asking him, so what's your objective with this? What do you want to do? Is this a cost saving thing? Do you feel like you're going to have less employees? He said, absolutely not. Our objective is simple. We're going to drive profit by giving a better customer experience. So I'm going to have the same staffing level, but now instead of one of my team members having to focus on 7 things, including taking orders and fulfilling orders, they're only going to be focused on the fulfillment of orders. So it will drop my error rate. The AI is going to be more efficient than a human at knowing what to push and how to set expectations. So my average sale is going to go up and my complaints is going to go down. And I believe over time that's going to yield to better profitability. My expenses aren't going down, but my profit margins are going up. And if we embrace technology from that lens, I think we're going to have a lot of success.
Let me give you an example on that. I did a panel at Focusrite on digital identity, right? And we had the Minister of Tourism from Aruba, and they piloted it last year, and effective March, this is going in. They have the Happy One Pass, which is, I'm not sure about the branding and the name, but that's okay. I wasn't involved in that.
Well, Aruba's been one happy island has been their tagline for a couple of decades. So it fits with their messaging.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're going to Aruba, what you do is you download the Happy One app, right? And you scan the chip on your passport, right? Just put it up, boom. Gets the data, gets the iCal data, which is required, internationally. Of if you're going to accept a passport, you get these pieces of information. Boom, that chip is legit because they trust the U.S. government. They know the public and private keys match up. Everything's good. You scan your face the same way Ticketmaster does or whatever to make sure that you're live, right? It's not just a photo. You do those 2 things. It's in the pass. It goes off to Aruba. They then check it against, all the watch lists and everything like that. That's good. You get a green.
Notice Aruba is not on his itinerary for cruises this year.
No, it's not. It should be though. But what you wind up doing, and the cool thing about this technology is the digital ID actually stays with the individual. It doesn't just become single purpose for Aruba. This is now, you've got this digital ID thing. Where else do you want to go? Right. And so airlines, they got 90 airlines lined up behind them and a bunch of other destinations. The cool part is his objective, 30 minutes from the plane to the beach. When you get off the plane in Aruba, you do not need your phone. You do not need your passport, but you do need to travel with your face. That's the one requirement. And it gets better because you want a shared ride or a taxi, you should be able to use this. You want to check in the hotel, no more we've got to photograph photocopy your passport, but you should be able to just go straight through because again, you're authenticated, you're validated by the US government credential, but also accepted by Aruba. If that's good enough, when you leave on the airline, they're just like, yeah, you're on the list from Aruba. You're validated. Good. That's your face. Onto the plane. Get out of here.
Lecter must love to travel to Aruba.
No. Okay. So the guy's also the Minister of Public Health, right? They're using, and this is the same technology that is used for COVID passports in Europe. They're using the same thing for public health to give what vaccinations have you had or hadn't had? Have you had your checkup? What's your emergency situation? I mean, it's just insanely good. But the way we got on this was saving staff. So you go, oh, so you're now going to just get rid of all the employees. He's like, no. But instead of having customs and immigration people sitting there literally scanning things and doing these clerical administrative stuff, now we can start looking to see, hey, what's all the white powder draining behind the guy's suitcase? What's that sort of thing going on? And it's 2.5 seconds to enter. Sorry, one last thing. You go, well, this has to be really expensive. And the minister argues, no. The cost savings are much better. Any idea of how long it took to implement? That's got to be the linchpin. It took 6 days.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Faster, cheaper, better right?
I want to know where the story of
Well-
the white cocaine or white powder coming out of the back of a suitcase was. Is that a?
Oh, what I love,
So-
what I love about both of these
Maybe-
stories,
Okay, ammunition, Lauren, whatever you want to have.
but what I love about both of these stories is they're starting with an objective of how do we provide a more consistent service experience to people at a fast food restaurant, right? Because nobody goes to insert your favorite fast food brand here because the food is, is the best steak you're ever going to have or the best meal you're ever going to have. They go there because they know what they're going to get, right? They know that it's going to be consistent. It's going to be good. They might like it a lot, but they know that they're going to get the same thing every time, and it's going to be quick, right? You said the most powerful thing in there, Robert, when you said their objective was 30 minutes from the plane to the beach.
Right.
Like they know why the guests are going there. They know why the traveler is going there. And they said, how do we make that as streamlined as we possibly can? That's the right way to be thinking about it, from my perspective, to be using technology to say, how do we deliver on an objective rather than how do we shrink our costs? You want to keep your costs contained, obviously, but how do you create a better experience that can drive more profits for you? Because expenses are capped at 0, right? You know what I mean? No matter what you do, you can only cut expenses to 0.
Yeah.
Right. Revenues, profitability is uncapped.
Yeah. Well, and again, the whole immigration thing, we're pulling into a port in Vietnam. This port, a very long distance from there to, like, if you want to go out to go pick up an excursion somewhere.
Yeah,
One of the guys, very good, tours by local person, terrific, goes, okay, I can pick you up at the ship if you'd like, because we can go, but we need clearance. And he goes, and a lot of people are uncomfortable with this, so not one way or the other, but you've got to send me your passport so I can then submit it to the port. So then they can say, yes, you can go pick you up. And I mean, that's a lot of friction. And it's like, do I really want to send my passport to, the guy? And he's just going to get a picture of it. He's, a PDF or something. He's not going to actually get the chip. So who knows if I've manipulated it or something? It just makes no sense. But you start looking through this decentralized digital ID technology, and you start going, wait a second, this just, this solves a lot of issues. Entering bars, are you old enough? Do you have your face? Sorry, you're not 21.
Right.
And you just go all the way. You work for this company. Yes, you're eligible for the IBM rate. Oh, you've got an Amex Platinum card. I don't know if something's combinable or not, but all the combinability of offers and all of that stuff all of a sudden starts falling into place. And all of a sudden you can start getting the stuff you're eligible for seamlessly, pretty much, right?
I do have a privacy question here.
Yeah.
First of all, I think this is super cool. I think this is so cool. It's, there's two quotes I like a lot. One is I like to say we live in the future. The other is, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed, right? And this is definitely, what things like Minority Report have been telling us for years we're going to have. I do have a privacy question of, is your ID stored somewhere? Like who has access to that data? Right?
You decide who gets it.
Perfect. Right. So you're provisioning the person scanning your face that you are who you claim to be and all that for whatever purpose. Yeah, that's awesome. That's great.
The way I set up the session at Focusrite was, I said, here's my daughter. She goes to a bar. What does she do? She has a credential from the Texas Department of Transportation or whoever does driver's licenses, right?
Yeah.
And she goes generally to some dude who's, the bouncer or the bartender.
Dude number one.
Yeah, dude number one, I want to come in. Hi, I want to show you my name, my birth date, my address, my donor.
Yeah, right.
To answer the question, are you over 21?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
That's not good, for anybody. And in college, she didn't have a fake ID. She had a real Texas driver's license, but it was from a friend of a sorority sister. So it wasn't her. They looked similar enough, and she did her homework in case she ran into a bouncer who went to that high school. She knew who the captain of the football team was, the cheerleader. She researched it out and used it very
The
efficiently.
cold gene pool runs strong in her.
But that's not. And even though that was a specific benefit to my daughter, that is not good.
So
But
this is
anyway, right?
The security is yours, and then the right to be forgotten. When you leave Aruba, it's gone. Except ICAO has these, regulations that yes, you've got to keep that data of who arrived and how long they were there for how long.
Sure.
I don't know. Interpol is going to go need that 10 years from now, whatever.
Right, but I'm thinking about. Yeah, sure.
And if you don't like those
Gordon.
terms, don't travel. Don't go to Aruba.
So Aruba is a very
information. Yeah.
it's a good test bed for something like this, right? Because it's very self-contained, it's self-managed. There's not a lot of stakeholders. They're dealing with a cohort that they don't get voted out if tourists disagree with them, right? So it's sort of a perfect test bed for technology like this.
Yeah.
But I think for something like this to exist here in the US is almost impossible, because although I believe there's always the balance between privacy and convenience, and it's more perception than it is reality. There's going to be narrative about fear mongering and about security, and we know that technology is not perfect. We know that in theory we'll give someone permission to use our data and it's secure, but there's breaches all the time, right? They're in the front page of the news. So I love this technology. I would embrace it myself. But I think getting all the different power brokers and stakeholders in a place like the US, or even a single city in the US, to like, I'd love to pilot this in Myrtle Beach, right? Everybody. Well,
this is how they get you, Stuart. This is how they get you. Then they're going to put a chip in you, and Bill Gates is going to be able to
cow tag you on the ear.
They're going to vaccinate you. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I love it. I love the convenience. I'm someone that will go convenience over privacy every single time, but not everyone is like that.
Well, and this I would argue is more private than anything else, because when you have the centralized databases, because I'm going to use the B word, blockchain is involved. But no.
Oh God. Okay. Well, gotta go.
I'm done.
But here's the interesting.
I only took an hour and a half.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing of what happens. And they're using IBM Hyperledger, but all IBM Hyperledger is storing is the public key from the trusted authority, right? So if you're a bar, the interesting thing is if you're the bar, you've got a little handheld point of sale thing, right? You don't keep anybody's information. You don't have any PII. You don't have any PCI data, right? All you
this
have.
This is actually what crypto is supposed to do. This is actually the best use case for crypto that I've seen.
So, and it's not crypto. It's just the blockchain technology. So you have an encrypted. You have an encrypted public key, which is saved to the blockchain, which is hypothetically hard to hack. Right? That public key is hard to hack. Right.
The public key is hard to hack.
And you will soon have quantum safe stuff, right? And I've been working on some quantum safe stuff. That's getting there. Those technologies, those standards are happening, and IBM's actually really.
Will the quantum zombies come afterwards? Because we had to have that as a topic today.
Yeah, exactly. so no, you have that, and then your device or your ID is the private key, right? Which associates with that public key. So the interesting thing is there's no internet. It's been cut out. But if you have the little handheld device, which has those little public keys, which don't take up a lot of space, you can just scan it and go, yep, that's good. Your private key matches the public key. You're good. You're in. And the user, again, needs a little bit more work, can just say, yes, this is an instantaneous thing that goes, you can know if I'm over 21, period. No other data. That's it. And after that, nothing else about me. And besides, all you got was kind of this private key anyway, which is meaningless and doesn't work with anything. Right. You're done. So security wise, that's great. Now, the problem is you're going to have all these groups who are going to want to own the customer, right? Not know the customer. They're going to want to own the customer. Yeah, exactly. So
me and my clients. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so with that, I think first you need to have the privacy regulations nailed down. So then you go, yeah, if you have any of this PII stuff hanging around your system, I don't care if they opted in, opted out. You're invited, just like the PCI stuff. If Tim decides he wants to give Hospitality Digital Marketing his, credit card credentials and all that stuff, and it's okay if you store it on your servers, that's still not okay if he said that.
How about a sticky note on the side of the computer that says "use code whenever available"? I mean,
Well, we all have it. Tim,
hold on, let me give you this. Let me give you the CVC while I'm at it.
But anyway, this technology is more secure, but it comes down to who do you trust in terms of these organizations, right? And then the other side's going to be who's Myrtle Beach, who's the such and such hotel,
right? How do you validate that? Right,
in Charleston, right? Charming Inns of Charleston. Are they really who they say they are? Is that's going to be the whole other? So this isn't like next week, but this is where it's all going to wind up. That's the end state. Is my.
I actually have one quick question, Robert. When you said not next week, bold prediction. Put a date out there.
I would say
for broad adoption.
Are you saying broad adoption to everyday life?
No. To these use cases where I think of something like mobile payments. We had a period where mobile payments. I was the most bullish guy in the world on mobile payments. I absolutely just raved about mobile payments to people in 2012, 2013, things
takes
along
about
those
7
lines.
years.
It took about 7 years before it actually became a thing, and the pandemic helped a ton, frankly. So so you're saying 2031 probably.
I'd say 7 years from now, I think there'll be broad. I think in terms of people looking at Aruba, I think it's going to be for cross-border traffic. That's going to be a lot. That'll probably be 3 to 5 years. I think there are going to be a lot of airlines, a lot of folks, again, because they're bigger, monolithic government.
We've seen some of that technology already, like you mentioned earlier in Europe. Like when I go to Europe now, it's very much Face ID. It's fingerprints. There's not a lot of baggage there.
I'm the turtle in this conversation because I want to bring back something from an older point that I wanted to make about engagements from the front, ownership and stuff. I think one of the key elements that's happened with what I'm doing successfully now, and I hope other people adopt the idea, is that they're including operations teams in the discussions with marketing and revenue management to the very purpose you're talking about in the reality of fulfillment and feedback as to what the operations people can educate the remaining departments on. That loops to something you did, Stuart, that I will say in answer to the how will this get adopted if it's almost not impossible for the US. I would lay cases that even when presented with the negative evidence of don't do it, like look at the effort against TikTok. Look at the effort of back even when Robert's generation of when Coca-Cola was bad for you because it, put a piece of meat in and it disappears. We will still drink Coca-Cola and we'll still play with TikTok. There are people that, to what you're saying, will look for the convenience of usage. Okay, brain rotting right there.
Hey, when I was young, Coca-Cola was made out of cocaine.
But out of all of that, I think there'll be an adoption based on what people want to do in almost defiance. Just like we were joking about the vaccinations and so forth. You get these countercultures purely to be countercultures. And there's going to be places that out of the value of using it, out of the admonishment of security, well, I already figure everybody knows anything about me already, so why not just be able to utilize the features that I find valuable and hope that they don't abuse their data that they have about me, or I go through other security protocols to change ways for them to discover it. I think that there will be adoptions like that at scale, just simply from the matter of its value proposition, the consensus of people's personal self-fulfilling desire to do something that they want. And that's the easiest medium that they can use.
Oh yeah,
Starbucks has something like $4 or $5 billion in cash on hand from people who've loaded their Starbucks cards.
Yeah,
which
Starbucks is like the 5th largest bank in the United States.
Yeah. Starbucks, it's basically a commitment. I'm coming back because you have my money, so I'll be back. And when I start running low, just take what you need.
Lauren, I just looked it up. The most recent date I can find is 2021. But as of 2021, 7% of Americans are not on the internet. So you're absolutely right. We're not talking about 100% adoption. We're talking about, we're talking about the overwhelming majority will reach, right? And that took 30 years. Here we are 30 years after the introduction of the internet as a commercial entity. And, we still got 7% who aren't using it. But the flip side is 93% are. So,
Aruba, you don't have to use this technology. You can just go get off the plane and go get in line. It's fine.
Go get in line. Yeah,
Well,
sure. And by the way, that's going to be one of the best.
Love that part of your travel experience.
But that's going to be the best part of that's going to be the best marketing they can possibly have, because I'm going to be the guy standing in line watching all these people fly by, right? And going, wait, what the hell, man? How do I get to do that? Right? Like that's the product is the marketing. It's the best thing you can possibly do.
But you look at something like TSA PreCheck, it hasn't been as widely adopted as you would think. There's a lot of people I know that travel regularly and still haven't done it. I'm like,
clear.
Because it's inconvenient. You've got to go have a little interview and spend $50 or whatever it is. There's a friction point there,
Yeah, well, sometimes pre-check sometimes can be longer than regular, but that's an outlier case, right? Yeah, I've run into.
Hold up.
Orlando.
Out of
Okay.
Orlando.
Yeah, I know. Orlando.
It's literally I'm sitting there with a coin toss of, do I do TSA pre today, or do I do clear today?
Everyone's safe do TSA PreCheck so you don't have to take your shoes off and expose other people to that smell. So.
Clear.
Actually, people paid for mine so that they have not.
No, I've been a Clear member since like day one, because I'm like a real, treat myself as a guinea pig for all this stuff. But Clear isn't great. Clear's a central database. You don't want that. That's Clear is doing it the wrong way, unfortunately.
And I also think that 7% you're referring to, Tim, of people that don't use the internet might be including some percentages of, like Robert, that don't even know they're using the internet. My TV works with no cable.
I want you to know I have an over-the-air antenna sort of thing.
I do too.
I've got
for the digital TV thing.
Yeah, I've got a
digital.
Tableau. I've got a 4-channel Tableau.
Tableau.
Yeah, those are great. My late stepfather, my late father-in-law used to have one of those, and it's great if you don't watch a lot of TV. Like, there's things those are fantastic for the right user.
Local news and a couple of other channels are good to go.
Yeah.
Great for hurricanes, by the way.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. What other problems do we need to solve today?
World peace and hunger are definitely off the board, but did you guys see the human AI pin that is? CES has a bunch of stuff, but okay, I'm talking about interface future. Like, this is a rough engagement that they're trying to do, where you hold your hand up and it projects on and stuff. But the idea of the Star Trek, hey, beam me up, Scotty, mentality of engagement, where you're not fixated on small screen size or having to distract yourself from the outside world. You can engage with it and some means of communication without disengaging from your environment, is what I was thinking.
So I actually, first of all, I'm going to be very candid. I have not seen the specific thing you're talking about, but I get what you're referring to conceptually.
Yeah.
I will tell you, the thing that I've been most impressed by, there's a guy named Ethan Mollick. This isn't the CES thing. This is there's a professor at the Wharton School of Business named Ethan Mollick, who studies entrepreneurship and things along those lines. He's a really fascinating guy. He's done a lot with AI in recent years. He requires his students to use AI and show their work, right? Because he's like, this is the world you're going to work in. Just show how you did it.
Yep.
What he's done is, on his phone, he's got an iPhone, and he's got the most recent one. I don't have the most recent one. Mine's a generation old. But it has something called the action button, right?
Yep.
Anybody here have the newest iPhone, right?
Yes, I do.
And basically, he's tied the action button to the ChatGPT app. So he's actually just pressing the button and talking to ChatGPT, and he says it's a life changer, right?
Right.
So I still think for the next X period of years, this is the device. This is my bold prediction. I'm going out on a limb here.
Right.
Maybe in 7 years it'll be glasses. Maybe in some period it will be, a different device. It'll be the pin. It'll be contact lenses. it'll be hearing, it'll be earbuds, right? It'll be something else probably.
Brain
But
chip.
for the next,
It'll be Neuralink.
yeah,
Elon's going to
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
working on that one.
But for the next 5 to
recalls
7
on
to
Neuralink
10 years, yeah, exactly. But I'm going to make the bold prediction that we're 5 to 10 years away from this not being the device.
Yeah.
But the device where you tap a button or you just talk to the thing and you have ChatGPT like capabilities, GPT-4 like capabilities, I think we're going to see quickly. In the adoption sense, right? It might take 3 years or whatever, but I don't think we're that far away from that person.
I'm going to take a little bit of a contrary opinion. I mean, I know what these guys are trying to do with the projector. I'm just in that kind of mood. Right? I need a vacation. No. So,
A 52-day multiple vacation.
A 56-day vacation.
All right, John Candy, planes, trains, and automobiles.
yeah, that's right. But, yeah, there's always going to be this input. I'm not sure about the projector onto your hands and things. You kind of go,
Yeah.
There's going to be something with that, but it can't just be voice, because there are lots of situations where you have to be able to somehow communicate with it, where you can't just start asking it stuff, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So there has to be some alternative forms of, and maybe the Neuralink thing is just, I'm going to think it and it's going to go, do whatever, right? But then you're going, no.
Well,
I was just imagining that. That wasn't what I wanted to do. Yeah.
And Robert, what I will admit, I am picturing. I'm taking a couple of different pieces and putting them together. So I'm thinking things like Google's multimodal search or things like that, where if I'm tapping the action button and I say, "Here's the camera," or I tap the button and I say, I'm going to speak the text, or I'm going to tap the button and I'm going to, say, get this data from another app, right?
Yeah.
So I think voice isn't necessarily going to be the primary interface. I would say it's going to be a primary interface, but it's going to be multimodal.
There is an interesting,
and I don't think we're that far from that.
Yeah,
this isn't next year, right? This isn't 2025. This is 2027.
I think we'll bridge it, right? I think the next generation of iPhones and Androids will have what this professor's done himself.
Right,
is inevitable. That's going to be baked in, where you can access it at AI agent quickly without friction.
I mean, technically, we've had it with Google Assistant and Siri for some. And I didn't mean to. Sorry for cutting you off. No. I'm so sorry. Hang with me for 1 second. I'm saying in the technology adoption curve, right?
Yeah.
The line I use all the time is Bill Gates has a thing of, we always overestimate the change we'll see in the next 3 years and underestimate the change we'll see in the next 10. My caveat to that is 3 years from when, right? Yeah. So Siri and Google Assistant, if we use that as our starting point, we're getting close to 10 years, right? We're not there yet. We're more at like 6 or something along those lines. Yeah. But 3 to 5 years from now, I think we have that, where Siri has been supplanted with a GPT-4 level intelligence, or assistant has been supplanted. So I'm saying we're saying kind of the same thing. I'm just saying, the clock probably started ticking a little earlier than we think.
You can tell your friend to actually do one step better. If he has AirPods Pro, jack it to a single tap on his AirPod Pro, and he can do the function. You can swap Siri for your engagement on your pros and do ChatGPT through it. So you keep whenever I didn't go tap and go, what is such and such? You get an answer. But because you're right, Siri sucks. But here's a small thing, just something that's happened that I see creeping in. Remember the Ray-Ban collaboration with Meta, cameras in the glasses, and it first featured that it had cameras, and it really kind of harkened back to the Google thing,
Google Glass.
Yeah, and so now they're featuring just the musicality. You listen to tunes, you can get in your action. Here's a fun feature that they're dealing with that there's been some dialogue about Meta talking to Google more about is. It already has image recognition function capability in the camera. You can look at something and it says you're looking at this, because it already does translations. You can look at a language translation, the camera's looking at it, and it'll read it to you. Not as functionally healthy, and there's no projection into your glasses, but you can hear from it and it can see stuff. And Meta's beginning to work with search query results with Google goggles and things like this, where as you look at stuff, it knows where you are, and also you can interact with what it sees.
Right.
It's a neat thing.
My prediction is you wind up with that sort of, I think there's going to be a lot of zero-click interaction, right? So you aren't going to have to do
Right.
anything. That and the decentralized ID. So you want to take an Uber, you should just be able to walk up to it, and not enough the guy has to kind of scan your face or something, something where you go, okay, it's you, hop in, and it's your car, right? You aren't getting at the airport where people hop into the wrong Ubers and all that sort of stuff, right? Which right now they're giving people like privacy codes or whatever, but
Right.
it's Amazon I think is pulling back on those stores where you just walked in and kind of walked out with your stuff, but I think that's going to be something where you have your little basket or some sort of self-contained area where you kind of go through. It knows who you are, it's got your and you can kind of pass through. That will get better, right?
Robert, I want to make a quick caveat there, just because I've been doing some research on this for a project I'm working on. They are closing the individual stores. It's that they're rolling the tech out to Whole Foods and that they're selling the tech to other stores. So they're ending the small stores, because that was really a pilot. Yeah, it was a pilot. It was a data collection play. It was to learn how to do it better.
Yeah.
And the way they're bringing it out at scale is through Whole Foods and actually selling the tech. Just walk out as the technology. Yeah. They're now selling that to other retailers.
It didn't work with the people pulling the hoodie over their face, grabbing the stuff, and jumping out the door either.
Right.
Robert, again, there were personal statement.
Yeah, they don't want to be in the business of running convenience stores. They want to be in the business of selling the technology to every retailer in America, right?
Yep,
and collecting data on purchase habits, to be fair.
Correct. For sure.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to be very transparent about this. You guys all know this. I don't talk about this publicly a lot, but you said I'm putting words in your mouth, Robert, but you were talking about being a little bearish on voice and things like that. I am one of the 1 in 6 Americans who have hearing loss. I actually can't use voice in a lot of contexts because if it's too noisy, I can't hear what the damn thing is saying to me. And, I have hearing aids. They connect via Bluetooth to my phone and stuff, but with background noise, even piped directly into my head, it's not as good as you might think. And I can't wear AirPods when I have my hearing aids in because they don't fit in properly. They're uncomfortable.
Right.
So there's a maximum number of people who can use that technology, and just because of the prevalence of things like AirPods, and we listen to music everywhere all the time, that number can get bigger over time with the people who have hearing problems. Sure. So voice has some genuine challenges as the primary interface. I think that will always have some limitations. Though I think it's going to get a lot better, obviously. But.
Yeah, and again, that's kind of a technological thing for how you have the hearing aid technology. Being able to again tap into your phone and provide better. Oh, we're going to have 3 drivers in each ear on the hearing aids and all that sort of. Really cool stuff,
actually, right? I'm so sorry. One of my favorite technical innovations of the last couple of years is not really technical. It's societal. It's legislative. Regulatory is the word I'm looking for. Is that hearing aids have been a regulated category, right? They were regulated by the FDA, and basically they've made it that they're more of a consumer device now. So 2 companies, one has announced their first product, and one has sort of intimated that there will be a product. And those 2 companies, respectively, are Bose and Apple. Yeah. So I actually expect for the devices to get a lot better and a lot cheaper real fast. I'm actually super excited about that on a very
Apple, so
level.
It's not going to be that cheap if it's Apple or Bose, but still.
Yeah, but it'll look cool while it's doing it.
Tim will be styling,
and you'll love them. Okay, the only other thing I wanted to bring up, because I don't know, are we going for 12 or 16 hours on this, Lauren?
I actually have to do one thing. Stuart, this is for you specifically. I need them to be more this size because, see, if it's something like this, they look like Lobot.
There you go.
You do.
Yeah, push it to the back. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Now he's Lobot.
That's not a look I'm vibing with in public. That's
like 5% of the audience really appreciated that reference.
and that's what I'm going for, a market segment of 1.
Yeah. By the way, I like how they're using Lobot in the comic books too. I like how they brought him into the comic books with Calvisian.
I was told we couldn't talk about Star Wars.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna turn this back.
Okay, bring us back, Robert.
Yes.
No, Tim mentioned the R word, regulation or regulatory,
Yeah. Sure.
really problematic area is going to be the regulation of AI. I just don't exactly know how they're possibly going to make that work well. I mean, the EU has started out and it's good, and the stuff that the US Biden administration came out with some stuff for some guidelines, which my argument is all the companies should be looking at those guidelines and adopt them, because then you're going to have better AI in your enterprise, right? Which is great. But the whole thing about how you deal with bad actors, I'm just not really sure, because let's be really quick. There are at least 6 different areas that you can regulate. You can say, well, training data, right? And certainly you got all the intellectual property, misinformation, things like that. Can you regulate the training data? Hard. I don't know, right? That's really rough because the data is just out there. The interpreter, which is basically what ingests all that training data into the AI models, can you regulate that? Well, don't ingest that. That's problematic, right? The third one is the neural network. Nobody knows how the hell that stuff works anyway, legitimately. Even the guys who design it and work with it, they're just like, so that's like off the table. That would be the last one you could regulate. The prompt, okay, it has all this data. You just can't ask it that question. That seems to be able to maybe get worked around. The response, okay, we found the response. We just aren't going to tell you, sort of thing. Don't tell people that. And then the last one is who owns it, which kind of goes back to like the TikTok thing. Like, oh, this is great, but hey, if it has Chinese ownership, then you can't use it. I don't know how each one of those is really problematic to regulate, and how you do it is of interest to me.
Tim?
It's so of interest to me. I don't want to claim I know the answer to this, but I do know vaguely what the answer looks like, I think.
Okay.
Right?
Just ask Tim.
So, no, God, no. Oh, dear God, no. What I have is a framework, and I don't have a regulation framework. I have a framework for what regulation is likely to look like. And the reason that I think this framework is valid is because this is not the first time we've seen this movie, right? First, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to make the bold prediction that 2024 is an election year. There is nothing happening at a federal level in 2024. I'm not saying I'm 100% certain, but I'm like 90% certain. I would bet real money that nothing happens in 2024 because it's an election year, right? So that's
actually, just to add, my biggest hope is when they decide to shut down, the government for whatever kabuki theater benefits, right?
Yeah.
Somehow I can leave the country on March 11th. That they'll have something up and running and be able to go, so things will still work for me to get out by March 11th.
The one caveat to your point, Tim, I agree with it. The caveat would be if there's a black swan event, some major high-profile usage of AI that has to be reacted to.
Yes.
But otherwise, it's not going to be a priority legislative priority.
Yeah.
Which, Stuart, you couldn't have set me up better if I'd asked you to. The second is regulation, at least in this country, and I think I can speak generally, this is true around the world, tends to be reactive, right? Regulation does not tend to be strong on the foresight side of things. It tends to be reactive to the world in which we live. The third thing that I want to add to this, and I really should save this till I make another point, but I'm going to bring this one in. One of my favorite lines in any piece of media ever is in the graphic novel Watchmen, when Adrian asks Dr. Manhattan, "Did I do the right thing in the end?" And Dr. Manhattan replies, "Oh, Adrian, nothing ever ends." If we think about things like Section 230, we are still debating how the internet should work.
Right.
right? And that's kind of where I was going with this specifically. This is why I think there's a framework here. It's going to be reactive. It probably doesn't happen in this year. It's probably reactive pending nothing happens in 2024 pending no black swan events. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that's an important caveat, Stuart. And I think we're going to be fighting this out in the courts and in legislation and things like that for the next 20 years, right? Yep. Easily. I think they're just like the internet. The internet was the Wild West when it first started. And then people broke the obvious laws. And everybody was like, well, there needs to be a law around. You can't do that, right? Or we can take a law that already exists and kind of just, shove it in there with enough stuff wadded around it to make it fit to cover the people who did the really egregiously awful things. And it will be this never-ending process over, it's going to be lumpy. There's going to be a period where right now we've done nothing. Something bad will happen. They'll do something very reactive. There'll be a bunch of stuff. Then it will sort of trail off over time until more and more creative people or awful people come up with creative and awful things to do, which will engender new regulatory regimes that are designed to counter people from doing that again. That's my framework that I see is the lumpy law framework. I just do that right now.
Yeah. Okay. No, and I agree.
Is my opinion, right?
The challenge is it's a tool, right? And go back to the old, the shipwreck deal, right? But it's how you use this thing, because example I use, because I did a panel with, and actually I wasn't moderating, I was a panelist on it. With like the head of regulation, the main government affairs person for Booking Holdings, right? And so and some other folks on the panel, a really smart guy with Sabre, who's like their chief technology officer, who was on the Google Maps team, a really, really smart guy. But anyway, we're talking about this stuff, and I'm like, well, it's kind of like regulating a hammer, right? I mean, there are hammer regulations, so the end doesn't fly off and stuff. But if you start trying to regulate how you use a hammer, I mean, you can kill people with hammers.
Yeah. I think a better analogy would be a weapon.
We're going to make it
like
soft.
An actual weapon, like a gun. There's a lot more regulation and usage control over weapons than there are tools. Right?
Well, but AI isn't necessarily a weapon. It's a
the fear mongering.
I would
that, right?
Oh, yeah.
I would use speech, by the way.
Yeah, speech is another
right.
Yeah.
Right?
How do you use this thing without this? Well, I use the hammer analogy because it's like, okay, we can make the end really soft, sort of thing. That's going to defeat the purpose of the hammer, right? You're going to break the hammer by.
Yeah, but we don't regulate who can have a hammer,
floppy, right? Well, no, that's the thing. Yeah, anybody can have it. Anybody should be able to have a hammer, but you can't use it to kill people. And that's where the regulation is going to become. It's going to have to be, what did you do with this thing? And then it winds up being reactive instead of proactive, I think.
But we also don't regulate who can create a hammer, who can sell a hammer.
Right.
We don't regulate that stuff.
Right.
So
Stuart, I'm not trying to be contrary. I don't actually know this. This is an honest question. Aren't there safety regulations about things like if you bring a hammer to market and it's an unsafe hammer? There's probably some regulation around that, right?
Yeah,
the construction of the hammer, not the use. The usage. I mean, you can do bad things with a hammer, really, really destructive things, but it's going to be, hey, you vandalize the side of that building, sort of thing. Or you,
I mean that's the law you broke, right?
Killed them. Yeah.
To bring it out of the abstract, right now, the New York Times is suing OpenAI for did they violate copyright?
Right.
That case is going to take, and I don't know the answer to this. I read this from somebody who is an attorney who studies these things. Right, that's a training data question. Right, but the person who I read, who was an attorney who studies IT, and I read one person. I don't claim to be an expert. I think they know what they're talking about. I don't know that I'm qualified to know that they're the best expert on this. But their point was these cases take 3 to 5 years to work out. Yeah. Like historically, this question is going to remain unanswered for a while, and it's not going to be the only one. And they'll figure out, okay, this is the reality of the world in which we live. And again, nothing ever ends, because if they get a ruling they don't like, it'll get appealed probably to the Supreme Court. This is going to take
the AI is
some
gonna
time to sort itself out.
AI is going to replace all the lawyers and the judges anyway, so you should be able
Actually,
to tolerate this.
My favorite line about this that I've heard, this made me laugh so hard, as there's an attorney I follow on Twitter who had a great line. He said, all these people who say that AI is going to eliminate all the lawyers is forgetting that AI is going to eliminate all the clients.
That's good. I like that.
That's fun.
Yeah. But
you're
but
seeing
here-
the market adapt, right? Like even with the licensing of training data, you're seeing OpenAI now making a lot of really smart business relationships with publishers of data and paying them up to $5 million a year just to license that data. And
Right.
a lot of these publishers are very happy with that. It's a brand new revenue stream that they, frankly, couldn't have dreamed of. And a lot of these folks, especially the smaller publications, were probably struggling to survive anyway. So it's a lifeline for some of these folks.
So keeping
And I've seen, actually, can I just say one other, just in that, very much in that vein. One of the questions early on being, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, where people were talking about, is it violating copyrights if it does the stochastic parrot thing, where it generates something that is itself copyrighted underneath the hood or something along those lines, echoes something that is copyrighted underneath the hood. And companies like Adobe, Microsoft, OpenAI, and Google have said they're going to indemnify their enterprise customers from any copyright thing. So yeah, the market adapts, right? Anyway, sorry.
It's like there's echoes of very similar things been going on with Google for a long time. When Google started going into all these museums and private libraries and offered to cover the expense of digitally archiving all of the data was in these places, and then going over and saying, and now they're using it in general information. Go, wait, whoa, this was a private library, and yes, but you signed off the fact that we would cover the cost of digitizing it in exchange that we'd actually have that data. That's what we're using now. It's like, well, that's not the purpose of what. And it's like, well, sorry, and then all that litigation begins to happen. But I would say in real world examples, going back to something you pointed out earlier, Stuart, about the proper perspective of AI as being a functional tool. How much of an argument would a person say that their private medical data helped AI solve cancer? In the sense that, okay, so AI acquired the data of people's personal information, and from that derived an answer that benefited the masses. Is that person, by rights of their private data, and in that sense, it's like, it's a matter of public opinion as to how far borders get pushed and so forth. But it's a hard line to say to the intent of its use versus its abusive use. And you're right. The obvious ones are easy to define and they're quick to it. As you said early on, there's going to be a black swan or something dramatic that happens by the usage of AI that might realign legislation against it, which is well after the fact, reactively. And then there's going to be this whole mitigation of exceptions, variations, definitions that go along with that process of that lumpy law thing. I want you to start the website Tim Talk. Tim, I just want you to start.
I think it's called Thinks Out Loud with Tim Peter. Right?
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. But I want website Tim Talk.
There's more content on Thinks Out Loud than TED. The TED channel, that's pretty limited compared to what Tim's produced.
What the Yahoos?
Well, that's only because the quality is so much lower. It's easier to put out there. Lauren, I'm going to pretend I'm a lawyer for a second. I don't know the answer to your question, but I'm going to pretend I'm a lawyer. If it is my personally identifiable information, HIPAA should already cover that. Right. If I am personally now, I might have to go to court to sue somebody to prove that A, they are using my data, and B, that they are violating HIPAA doing it, which is why these things take a while to solve themselves. But HIPAA covers it if it's my personal data where I'm personally identified. If it's in the aggregate, I probably signed a waiver somewhere along the line that said my data could be aggregated for research purposes, probably. But I'm probably going to have to go to court, or the people who I'm suing will have to go to court to defend and prove that that is true. So again, it takes a while because, and again, I'm just looking at what happened with the internet. I happen to be a nerd about that stuff, especially in the early days of the internet. If there's oh God, I forgot about his name. He's a really brilliant researcher at Harvard, the Berkman Center for Internet Studies or something along those lines.
Ed St. Onge? Is it Ed St. Onge? Oh,
That's the
St.
guy.
Onge?
Yeah.
Professor St.
brilliant.
Onge.
The Berkman Center for Internet and Society, the Berkman Klein Center now. Jonathan Zittrain. I was very fortunate. I was at a conference in '95, maybe, and I saw this guy Jonathan Zittrain give a speech about this, and he was a young, legal researcher, legal scholar at Harvard back in the day, and he was asking the same questions you're asking, but it was about the internet. Right. And the internet has permeated every aspect of our lives. And we're still fighting about how the law should apply to elements of the internet. This is why AI isn't going to make lawyers go away.
No.
Lawyers are going to be arguing this for 50
They'll just
years.
be able to be more efficient because they'll use AI to research.
Correct. Right. That's right. They'll have fewer associates staying up all night doing research, but they'll just be saying,
the whole clock thing on the Wrath of Khan. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Truly, yes, no,
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, again, let's back to out of science fiction. No, I'm just kidding. No, but the interesting thing's really going to be the AI gets better with the more information it has. So on medical stuff, you just look at cancers, right? It's probably either genetic or environmental, pretty much. I'm not,
Sure.
Well, what if you had all the information of every place that person had ever been and everything they ever ate, all that, you have all that data. Wow.
Or at least models that showed you fell into a specific bucket of people who went through certain. Yeah,
you start doing that. All of a sudden, you get a cancer cure a hell of a lot faster, right? So you go, wow, here's all the societal benefit. Yeah,
medicine.
But it's like, but then you go, then there are going to be all the business ramifications. Go, oh, wait a second, the Twinkie that you ate in, or whatever, the 3,000 Twinkies you ate, now you can go sue whoever. It's completely problematic, right? Because you got all that data, then you can go back. It's the other side of the intellectual property, right? It's like, that's my stuff, you can't use it. It's like, oh, wait a second, I'm now going to go back at you because you have something that's not quite right. And
I'm waiting for the landmark Supreme Court case of Lauren Gray v. Twinkies.
Yeah, guys, like, why are you picking on the Twinkies, man?
Well, and the new people
Stuart,
who host this are going to go, no, that was the old company, not us. We have no liability. So,
Stuart, you said something a moment ago while Robert was talking, and I didn't hear it. I'd love to hear what you were saying. Sorry.
I got distracted by Robert, so I probably forgot it. But the point I was going to make, I think, was, U.S. is a very different animal in a lot of ways, right? I think that the true American dream still exists.
Sure.
I think it's more innovative, it's more progressive than any other country on the planet today. Despite what the mainstream media may tell us, it's a wonderful place to live, and anyone that wants to and has the opportunity can be successful with hard work and luck and all the other stuff, right? But I think if there's sort of two paths we can go down here. We're not that far away from AI becoming not just smarter, but self-improving, right? And when we get to that point, we're going to see an exponential transformation in technology like the world has never seen before. I feel like we're already seeing that to some degree. Like, I think the barrier to create a new business and to compete on a level with some very established businesses, the barrier is so much lower than it was. Developers that are friends of mine, I know, are several times more effective today at their job than they were 6-12 months ago.
Sure.
Right? And so if regulation does come in, and it's naive regulation or a little heavy-handed as regulation can be, this could be the beginning at the end of the American dream and the way America has led the capitalist society globally for a long time. Because if we put in this regulation, there's no one putting this regulation in other places, and we're going to become a lot less competitive to some of these other places. And I'm not fear mongering. I'm not saying, hey, China's going to take over the world, right? I'm not that kind of a person. But I think there are other countries and other smart people around the world that could probably leapfrog the U.S. if we
Oh, sure.
get in
sure.
our own way here, you know.
Oh yeah,
But
the whole
I think,
pause development on AI for 6
yeah,
months, like
it's ludicrous,
so
right?
disingenuous, mostly
Yeah,
by
yeah.
people who want to
Ludicrous.
catch up, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, anyone that suggests that, vote them out of office tomorrow. It's such a naive approach.
Yeah.
I think a wait and see approach right now. I think apply the law as it stands. Right, if someone
Yeah.
uses a tool to break the law, they should be completely taken,
Sure.
to the
Right.
fullest extent of the law and made an example of. But I think we have to embrace AI. Like there's no going back.
Sure.
The cat's
Sure.
out of the bag here. I tell my team, I tell our investors and partners and our agencies the same thing Tim says. I probably use a lot more words because he's the most tweetable person in the world. But what Tim says is AI won't replace your job, but smart people who use AI will.
Yeah.
And that's the case, and that's going to become more and more the case every day. So you got to, everyone watching, listening to this, if you're not currently actively playing with the AI, you should be.
Oh, God,
and you
yeah.
really should be actively, strategically infusing it into your day-to-day routines, because it makes you
Oh
a
yeah.
much more efficient and effective person, an employee, and productive member of society. Like there's nothing I do now where I don't start with the question, can AI help me accomplish
Yeah,
this task
for sure.
quicker, more effectively, or have a better result? Everything I start, I have that question now.
And just
the
to
answer normally is yes, to be fair.
yeah, but just to depress everybody, the bad actors using AI are going to be messing with your business.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but here's the
And
thing.
there's the shipping.
I tell this story all the time, and this is the way I think about it. I can't guarantee that AI won't make your job go away. It might make your exact job go away. It's possible. Here's the thing I want people to keep in mind. My grandmother lived 100 years ago, right? I'm the youngest child of somebody who didn't have kids until they were older, right? And so my mother's mother was a telephone operator in the 1920s, right? So 100 years ago, right? She is, to this day, the only telephone operator I've only ever met in my entire life. She worked for the phone company. She was connecting calls by plugging. The only telephone operator I've ever met. You weren't a telephone operator.
I was.
You were a switchboard operator.
Oh, okay. Oh, true. 18. Yeah. Okay. Central telephone.
Bob Bell telephone operator.
Bell.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Connected phone calls for anybody in the country.
I got to use wires to do it, though.
You had a patch bag. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. All right. So when my grandmother was a telephone operator, there were more women working as telephone operators than there were, and this is one of my favorite lines I've ever heard, than there were trained nurses in the United States. I don't know how many untrained nurses there were, but there were more women working as telephone operators than there were trained nurses. What is also true is that there are no telephone operators today. The job doesn't exist. Technology made it go away, period. And there are more women working as nurses today than worked in the United States when my grandmother was a telephone operator.
Right.
Wow.
And that's one job, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm not real worried about this. If we go back to colonial times, most people were farmers. There are probably fewer farmers in America than there were 250 years ago. And when people say AI is completely different and it's completely new and all this kind of stuff, that's true. But I think the technological innovation we have seen since 1780s to today is as close to science fiction as you could possibly get, right?
Yeah.
And yet there's, fewer farmers, yet we all have food to eat, right? There's more people working, there's more people eating. AI might make your job go away, but you're not going to beat it by this is all meant to echo Stort's point. You're not going to win by putting your head in the sand and ignoring it and hoping it goes away. You're going to win by learning how to use these tools. And, if they automate away part of your job, you're the person who uses the tool. If they automate away 100% of your job, you'll learn how to do something new, because that's what you're going to have to do anyway. Good time to start.
The good thing is it automates the boring stuff you don't enjoy doing.
Absolutely.
Boring stuff, the dangerous stuff, all that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
I would say It's similar to the phases that we've gone through, in the sense of it will change. I would add augmentation. What you just said, Tim, is it will change how you have historically been doing your job.
Right.
Yes, it'll omit some, but it'll also, because we did the same thing with the internet. We had this resistance to the usage of the internet as a viable integration to hotel operations. We had GMs and people that say, "I run a hotel. I don't do that internet stuff." There's not many of those left. There's nobody around. They were replaced with a GM that was behind them going, but that wasn't a GM going, I can do the internet and do your job, even with the benefit of the internet. And I think AI is going to be a little bit like that, where, for instance, just in use case that I'm having right now, I'm trying to use AI to do interpretive analysis of data, and it's still just best suited right now to report data. And so now what I've done is answered the problem of, for the people that don't like looking at graphs and charts and lines and pie things and stuff and just need an answer, I'm creating language insight ones that they can just, I want to ask this question: what is my best performing channel and lowest cost factor? And it will give me an answer. And so I don't have to look and discover it in the formats of dashboards and reports that I'm being given. Instead, I can get to what I need to use that information to a decision I need to use. And that's a helpful component. And yeah, it does cut the mundane out, but it's a solution. It's not telling you, hey, you should do this differently for what you're doing because your yield. That's what I want to build it to do, but it's not in that You have to do the math for it and then use that math in the answer problem.
I'm gonna quote Tim Peter again, because I literally told him the other day, I'm glad his book's coming out, because I've started writing a book, but I'm realizing that 90% of the content of my book is just Tim Peter. Yeah. So,
which I have no problem with you doing that. Just don't beat me to the market with it.
And the title of Stuart's book is going to be Tim, which is great.
You're very kind, Stuart. You were saying.
But no, he talks a lot about digital, right? And how digital made everyone's job easier, but therefore also made everyone's job a lot harder, because there's more competition and such. And AI is another example of what happened with the digital revolution. It's exactly the same. It will make your job easier, but it will give everyone else that advantage as well. And so it's going to become a lot more complicated at the same time as becoming easier.
Well,
thanks for that, Stuart. Go ahead.
My question is, you want to use the right tool for the job, right? That's the absolute given in all management.
We're back to hammers again, because if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right?
Exactly. That's what you don't want to do. Yes. You want to avoid that. The question that I don't know the answer to this is, what are humans better at than AI, right? Innately better at. And that's going to be the big question for true job destruction and kind of societal sort of upheaval. If the decision winds up being, what, the AIs have figured out empathetic decision making or something like that, right? Because you go, oh no, it's just looking at this empirical stuff, and it's like, right, kill all the people to make paper clips is not necessarily a great outcome, right? So I don't. Yeah, and I think that's going to be really interesting. And I think that's the question is, society is going to have to figure out, what are people better at, right? And is it going to be handcrafted things, calligraphy? Probably not. I don't know.
I think that's where the uncertainty comes in. I think that's a really, really important question, Robert. You get to something very core. Because I think where a lot of the fear comes in is about the uncertainty of, we don't yet know what AI is good at and what it's not good at. So right now, it's all potential, right? Right now, AI is going to be better than everybody at everything all the time.
We're a quantum zombie. We're in multiple states.
But that's probably not true. We just don't yet know where its limits are, right? Is AI going to grow at an exponential pace, or is it going to hit a point of diminishing returns? Nobody knows the answer to that until
I predict the exponential side, though, just because it will be self-improving. And the question is, once you get to the self-improving side, I don't know exactly how you slow it down. And is it right to slow it down? I don't know. It could come up with really, really good stuff. And it could come up with really, really good stuff. You go, oh, the optimum population of planet Earth is 2.3 billion people. Uh-oh. That's the row for this week.
Yeah. Well,
All right,
you know.
Thanos, snap your fingers and make it happen, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Gentlemen, this is a delight. I have missed this. This has been a lot of fun to talk with y'all. Unfortunately, I got to go pay some bills, so I'm going to have to drop off.
We're
here
at
in
a
just second.
2-hour of happiness, and
Yeah, I gotta
yes,
jump too.
yeah.
Wait, I thought this was just the intro. Oh, damn it.
Yes, Robert, for us, it is just a warm up.
This is the green room.
Warren
We're
was
about to
gonna
go live.
publish this
Yeah,
as
we
a
haven't even turned
teaser. This is
Hey,
a teaser. for the
Robert,
actual
I
show.
just need one more square for my bingo card from you. Can you mention the college that you attended?
I can't.
I got
Ladies
the
and gentlemen.
4 seasons. I got the. I just
Ladies
missing.
and gentlemen, how can you tell the person who went to Cornell at a party? Oh, don't worry, they'll tell you.
I thought that was Rutgers. No, I'm just kidding. The State University of New Jersey.
That's not even your adjunct
The
professor.
state.
Bingo.
By the way, I
got
never
bingo.
attended Rutgers. I want to point out, I never attended Rutgers. I just worked there. I went to another state school. We hated that Rutgers was the State University of New Jersey. We're like, what are we, just a state university? What the hell, man?
Oh, dudes. Well, yes, and minus any formalities, I do. Tim, is there anything you want to talk about? I didn't talk about what you're ready to put out. I mean, do you want to say something about it? Or?
I mean, can I share my screen for a second?
Please do. I mean,
Did you change the title under our recommendations and the color scheme and everything?
I did. This is not the final version because the designer accidentally misspelled forward, so it doesn't show who's writing the forward on here. I'm so sorry, I can't find the share my screen.
oh, it's a little plus in the
okay.
upper left-hand corner. Yeah.
There we go. Share screen. Here we go.
Taylor Swift's Guide to Business. Really? Aren't you kind of pandering?
Swifty. No, that's you, Robert. You're the Swifty.
Original
Can
title
y'all-
on camp.
can y'all-
We can't figure that out.
Hey, that's what you
Oh,
said.
the
Nice,
white,
nice.
yeah, the white background looks tremendous, Tim. Look at this.
So this is we're getting down to the wire here. We're in pre-production right now. The writing is pretty much done. We're out to some beta readers. We're still working on a couple of chapters, just tightening them up and the like. And then we go into production probably at the end of February or early March, and this should be available wherever fine books are found, and probably where crappy books are found too, somewhere around Q2, April, maybe early May-ish. So digital reset, driving marketing and customer acquisition beyond.
Did you add the
Paper
little
will be-
flame thing to the paper airplane?
No, that's been there. That's been there.
I never saw that until I saw it on a bigger screen.
Wait,
here.
hang on. Wait. Oh, that's a paper. Tim, you need to check that. I think that wasn't that Pol Pot symbol for the Khmer Rouge? I'm not sure.
So funny thing you say this. A friend of mine, we were out to dinner with a friend of mine who was working on a book, and his first version of the title was "Take the Red Pill," and we were all like, "No, don't call the book that, man! No." And he was just referencing the Matrix. He didn't recognize the other reference there. We were like, no.
Oh, yeah.
That is my worst nightmare. Of course, is the day that it hits. You all remember that there was we were talking about this in a group chat about the company that had I can't remember what they made, but the company who launched on like September 10th, who was called ISIS.
Bad time, bad
just
place. Yeah.
bad timing. And didn't do anything wrong. They just, bad
ISIS
timing.
Theater is closing in Fort Worth finally. They lasted this long. It had
There
been
you go.
forever,
The thing
but-
about was it Chrysler? They launched their new minivan series with the shape of the Challenger, literally the month before everything happened.
Oh man. Oh,
No,
yeah,
the best on that was always Chevrolet with Nova.
Nova, yeah,
Nova,
Brazil,
yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, it didn't work
Yeah.
so well in Spanish-speaking markets, but
Yeah.
So anyway, that is the book that will be available in Q2, hopefully early Q2. The biggest bottleneck is the guy whose name is on the cover. So if it's not out in early Q2, you know who to blame.
Buying a
and
copy.
are you going to be
For us,
hard copies, autographed
So-
hard copies? How are you? Yeah.
So the way we're releasing this is being released professionally independently. It will be an ebook primarily, but we are going to do a print on demand option. I will do some print on demand copies for promotional copies and the like. So I'll do a handful of those. And then we've already talked to some folks about an actual print version for bookstores and the like, but truthfully, we want to see how the ebook sells first.
Sure.
Okay, Stuart.
Right.
Stuart,
Is
Let the
there an Audible
market know
version
us.
in the making?
That is the plan. We're figuring out how that part works, right? The folks we're working with have not done audiobooks before, but they're open to it, and it's something we want to.
Well, if you just want to read it out loud and record yourself, I'll listen.
I was about to say you should just read the book and have it.
hey,
Robert,
Stuart.
We certainly have. We've got the setup, so it's
Stuart,
certainly plausible.
Stuart, our plan, we've got to talk. Our plan to buy the intellectual property of Borders Books and relaunch the bookstore because of Tim's books. We've got to discuss it. He isn't doing hard copies right off the bat.
I want to know when Robert's book's coming out, How I Got Away with It, 52 Days in Paradise by Robert Cole.
It's very funny you say that, Robert. I don't mean to quote myself, but there's a subtitle of a chapter. There's a section header of a chapter that talks just about some of the regulatory environment you have to deal with when you're doing digital marketing and things along those lines, and how the regulations aren't necessarily local to your own jurisdiction, depending on where your customers are. And the subtitle is called Borders Went Out of Business, and I don't mean the bookstore. So, so anyway.
Well, Mr. Stewart, any grandiose announcements of books and speaking and anything like that?
Well, I don't personally have a book coming out, but Visit Myrtle Beach does, and so we have our first children's book called Splish Splash Squawk, and it is targeting families with neurodiverse children, and who,
great.
87%.
That's awesome.
87% of families who have kids on the autism spectrum don't currently travel in the U.S.
Yep.
And so we are actively trying to attack that problem head on. And so the book is going to hopefully come out in April, and it's beautifully done. It follows a series of children that face sensory challenges on vacation. It happens to be in Myrtle Beach, but Myrtle Beach is mentioned literally once in the entire book. This is a PSA. This is not a direct promotion,
Nice.
And so we're going to
That's
launch
awesome.
that. But in conjunction with that, we're talking to some major streaming providers right now who shall remain unnamed, but we have created a 6-part miniseries, unscripted TV series that follows 3 families who have children on the spectrum that traveled to Myrtle Beach last year. And we documented their experiences. And I will say, I mean, it's hard for me to be objective, but I've shared the 6 episodes with a handful of close people. And man, it not only is it going to push the perception of Myrtle Beach, which is obviously my job, but more importantly, it's going to change people's lives, and especially folks that are impacted by autism.
Awesome.
It's one of the most powerful pieces of TV I've ever seen. I mean, I showed it last night to a group of people, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It's
That's great.
the project I'm most proud of in my entire career, and so I'm really hoping we find a home to publish it soon. Like I said, we're talking to some of the major streaming services, but those places are slow, and as you've seen in the news recently, some of them have had some challenges with keeping with major layoffs. But it's a project. It's a passion project for us, and we're very excited to.
That's great.
You should be very proud of that story.
Yeah,
That's
very
amazing.
much.
Well done. Very well
Stuart,
done.
I know this doesn't mean much as of it now, but whenever you do get that out, we'll put it up on, because we do have the TV channel. We'll put it up on the TV channel on this. They're just availability of people for the hospitality channel, and also there is a pathway for I can talk to you about for Hulu and stuff like this, that for submission processes outside.
Yeah, we've looked at the self-publishing. I mean, honestly, this content is of the caliber that someone
absolutely
paying a lot of money.
You want it to be a feature ability.
Netflix,
and
Netflix,
our goal
Hulu,
is to take revenue from this to produce a second season.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. It's amazing the world of
and the title is Traveling the Spectrum. So
that's perfect.
That's awesome. Oh my God.
I had a consulting project. This is now, a decade ago, with a couple of women. They were they even had like Temple Grandin kind of relationship with her. Unfortunately, and what they wanted to do was to have hotels have, basically kids camps for neurodivergent kids. And it's huge. I mean, we looked into it, incredible markets, incredible benefit. I mean, communication, very straightforward, but unfortunately, these two people who wanted to do it were somewhat disingenuous. They just wanted to travel around the world to stay at cool hotels and do a training thing, right? Which was so horrible. When the key was franchising it, right? And you go, oh my God, you guys are on this huge, and they didn't want to do it. And they stiffed me on the last, like the last part of my, payment. Just like these people are horrible people trying to basically make money off of this, a group that's underserved and with huge.
Well, let me give you an alternative. If you're a hotel watching or listening to this, there's an organization called Champion Autism Network. They're actually based in our backyard in Surfside, but they're a national company, and they have a piece of their organization is called Autism Travel Club. And so they do very low cost training for all of your staff about what is autism, what does it mean, how does it impact the kids. They can do it virtually. They don't have to travel to you. I literally think it's $395 a year. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the ballpark for you to train your entire staff digitally. They can come to you and it's a little more expensive. But they've got an app now, Autism Travel Club, where people on the spectrum can download and see the certified destinations and certified hotels, restaurants, attractions. And it's really not that hard, guys. The accommodations these people need are not that challenging. They're not that burdensome, and it makes the world of difference to these people.
Absolutely. And they're very loyal, very, very loyal.
And a close-knit community that will tell everyone they know. You will get a lot of business. So even if you're a heartless person and don't want to do it for the right reasons,
do it selfishly.
You'll make more money by embracing this as a strategy, for sure.
Even the cold-hearted Ed St. Ange would want to do something.
The Grinch that would be Grinches. Yeah.
That's awesome, Stuart. Well done. Very
very awesome. And I need to chase you down, Stuart, about something, because I have an investment interest in Best Buddies and stuff out of Miami. Different concept for support, but just the fact that there's collaboration potential. Anyway, gentlemen, it has been an honor and a privilege, and I was truly genuinely happy.
I was hoping.
Robert, I don't want to talk about Robert.
I don't want to talk about what I'm doing. I was hoping that Stuart, this whole thing was these kids could go to Mittery Best.
Best, yeah, that's funny. The only reason I showed up today is I thought this was an intervention for Lauren, but I guess we forgot that.
and yes, I do need one. It is. Please make. Well, I'll say that it was, but no, I'm sorry, Robert. I did ignore the fact of what is happening other than the 52 days.
Nothing's happening. I'm in March. I've got a ton of stuff I have to do before that. I'm working on a big tech stack project, hospitality tech stack project for a VC. But once that gets wrapped, I'm heading on the boat.
Did you get the universal ID identifiers for hotels sorted out?
I may do that when I come back. I'm going to do some deep soul searching if I really want to try to push that over the goal line. But that universal ID makes a lot of sense, and it's probably essential to identify who's responsible for the hotel. The same way I was saying on the decentralized ID on the individuals, you need to set up that peer-to-peer relationship and have who's that trusted group. So it's probably there. I've actually figured out all the funding and financing and interest and things like that. I just need to figure out if I really want to do it. So if I have the energy, because it's going to be 7 years.
Oh, wow.
You've been grinding
that. Everything takes 7 years.
Because everything takes 7 years.
But that was Open Travel Alliance when we did the first interoperability committee on that for those XML specs. That was 7 years. So
that's the title of today's episode. Everything takes 7 years.
A 7 year. No, you got to spot the 7 year itch. Something like that.
7 years. Exactly.
Okay.
Now, gentlemen, again, thank you. Sincerely, genuinely, it's food for the soul, mind wise, especially brain food for me, and an absolute privilege to be able to talk to you all again.
I'd love to do this more frequently. Certainly can't make a weekly,
shortest episode ever at under 2 hours and 15 minutes. Woohoo!
Yes. So for those who wish to find Tim, Peter, where do they find you, and where if they're going to find more about the book, please?
TimPeter.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm linkedin.com/in/TimPeter.
And for travel advice and ways to get onto boats without proper ID, Mr. Robert Cole, where can they find you?
How to subvert hospitality or any travel industry revenue objectives. Yeah. No, Robert K. Cole, mostly on everywhere on social media, pretty much, and rockcheetah.com.
Mr. Stewart, I don't know if you want people to reach out to you or just admire the craziness. And obviously, the thing you're doing right now is just absolutely freaking awesome. But where can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk nerdy stuff like Star Wars, then you can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Stuart Butler, Stuart, the proper way. But if you really want to see me,
he's from the Tongan people.
Book a vacation to Myrtle Beach, and then come by the Chamber of Commerce, and you'll find me working away there. So, but yeah, that helps me if you book a vacation. So that's shameless plug. Go to visitmyrtlebeach.com.
Yay! And of course, Hospitality Channel TV, which we have been on. We've been on TV this entire time, which is nice. And lots of other fun stuff to find at the HDMs. Yes. Gentlemen, thank you so very much. And the next time it won't be happening soon enough. I hope we get to do this more often and all that kind of good stuff.
See you all.
As long as we
great seeing you all.
As long as we can keep Ed off the show, everyone's in.
I'm sure we'll hear about that, Robert. Thank you for dragging that back in.
Ed didn't walk beyond the first 5 or 10 minutes. You know, Ed. So, he's asked his AI to summarize the show for him.
He's not going to watch it if he's not on it. Come on.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Gentlemen, thank you. I will see you all. Talk to you all hopefully real soon.
Yeah, everyone.
All right.
All right.